Part 1. The hook and setup. Ella Parker had always believed that mornings carried a kind of quiet magic. The soft lights spilling across her small Toronto apartment. The gentle hum of the city waking up it was her favorite time of day. Yet on this particular morning, the magic felt different. Almost like a whisper urging her to notice something she had been ignoring. She sat by the window with her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea, staring out at the streets below. People hurried to work, umbrellas bobbed through puddles left by the night's rain. And the city's heartbeat felt steady and familiar. But inside her, a restless energy hummed, one she hadn't felt in months. Ella was used to her life being predictable, a quiet job at the bookstore. Solo evenings filled with novels and weekends that blurred into each other. She liked the calm, yes, but sometimes the calm felt like loneliness. Her phone buzzed with a reminder about a meeting later that afternoon. And she glanced at it, letting out a soft sigh. Part of her longed for something unexpected, something that would break the steady rhythm of her days. She didn't know what it was or who might bring it. But a subtle hope stirred in her chest, deciding to step out for some fresh air. Ella grabbed her coat and headed toward the cafe she often visited on her walks. The streets were familiar, lined with old brick buildings and small shops. But today they seemed to hold a kind of quiet promise, as if they had been waiting for her to notice something she usually overlooked. As she walked, a sudden movement caught her eye. Near the library steps, a man struggled with a stack of books, the wind threatening to topple them. Ella paused instinctively, her heart quickening. He was tall, with a kind of easy confidence, and yet there was something vulnerable in the way he handled the books. When one slipped from his grasp, she stepped forward. "Here, let me help," she said, reaching down to steady it. The man looked up, and for a moment the city around them seemed to fade. His eyes were a deep shade of brown, warm and thoughtful, and when he smiled, it was both apologetic and sincere. "Thanks," he said, his voice calm but carrying a subtle intensity that made Ella's chest tighten. "I didn't expect a rescue today." She laughed softly, feeling a strange flutter of curiosity she couldn't quite name. "Neither did I," she admitted. He introduced himself as Nathan. And they began to talk about the books, about literature, about small things that usually didn't matter. And yet something about the way they connected, even in such a brief encounter, felt significant. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was quiet, gentle, strangely comforting. As they shared these moments, Ella felt a warmth she hadn't noticed in a long time. There was a spark of connection, subtle yet undeniable, that made her heart beat faster. Nathan's words were careful, thoughtful, and his laughter carried a lightness that reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, the joy of simply being seen. When the conversation ended and they parted ways, Ella walked to the cafe with a new awareness tingling in her chest. She realized she was smiling for no particular reason, her thoughts lingering on the man she had just met. For hours afterward, she found herself replaying their brief conversation, analyzing each word, each glance, and wondering what it might all mean. At the cafe, she ordered her usual coffee, settling into the familiar corner where she often sat alone. Yet today, even the routine felt infused with possibility. Something about the morning had shifted, something intangible, something she couldn't yet name. The world felt just a little brighter, the air a little warmer, and her own thoughts a little fuller. Ella gazed out the window again, watching as people passed by, each caught up in their own stories. And she realized that for the first time in a long while, she wasn't just observing life, she was waiting for it, hoping it might bring something unexpected, something that would make her feel truly alive, even if only for a moment. She sipped her coffee, letting the warmth spread through her, and felt a quiet thrill of anticipation. It was the kind of anticipation that came not from certainty, but from possibility. She didn't know when or if this feeling would lead to anything tangible, but she felt ready to follow it wherever it might go. And in that gentle, ordinary morning, with the city humming softly around her, Ella Parker discovered the first flutter of something she had been longing for without even realizing it. A chance at a new beginning, a moment that might change everything. Cliffhanger. And as she left the cafe later that day, she couldn't shake the feeling that their brief encounter was just the beginning, though she had no idea how or when it might return. Ella couldn't stop thinking about Nathan. His smile, the warmth in his voice, the way he had made her feel noticed it, lingered in her mind like a soft melody. That evening, as she prepared dinner in her small kitchen, her thoughts drifted back to the past, to the quiet moments that had shaped her heart and made this encounter feel so unexpected. She remembered high school, walking home with her best friend Sarah under the golden autumn leaves, sharing secrets and laughter that felt like they could last forever. She had always been careful with her heart, protective even after a friendship had quietly faded into distance. Love, she realized, had often been like a book she wanted to read, but never could finish the pages, always slipping from her grasp at the wrong moment. Nathan, too, seemed to carry invisible threads of memory. When they spoke at the library, she had glimpsed fleeting hints of sadness in his eyes, a quiet reserve that suggested he had known disappointment before. Yet there was also a light there, a hope, a longing that mirrored her own. It made her wonder what stories his past held, what moments had taught him both caution and tenderness. The next day, Ella found herself walking through a small park she had loved since childhood. The air smelled faintly of fresh grass and the remnants of morning rain. She imagined Nathan walking beside her, their conversation flowing as easily as the river nearby. She recalled the way he had laughed when she had handed him the fallen book, and she felt a pang of warmth mixed with longing. It was strange how someone she barely knew could already feel so familiar. Her mind wandered further, back to college days when she had shared late-night talks in dorm rooms with friends, hearts full of hope and dreams that seemed larger than life. She remembered sketching the skyline in her notebook, feeling a quiet ache for something she couldn't name, a connection, a bond, someone who might see her for all that she was. And now, in Nathan's presence, she sensed that ache stirring again, not as pain, but as anticipation. Nathan's past, she realized, must have its own stories, moments of closeness, people who mattered, and experiences that had shaped him into someone careful yet open. She imagined him sitting quietly in his apartment, reading the same book she loved, perhaps remembering people he had cared for, choices he had made, and moments he wished had lasted longer. The thought made her heart ache softly. It was comforting, too, to know that he had a life rich with experience just as she did. When they met again that afternoon at the library, the air seemed charged with quiet expectation. Nathan smiled as he saw her, and for a moment, the busy streets outside seemed to fade. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again today," he admitted, and there was a softness in his tone that made Ella's heart stir. They walked along the aisles, talking about books they had loved since childhood and authors who had shaped their imaginations. With every word, they shared fragments of themselves, the memories that mattered, the quiet joys, the disappointments that had left a mark. Ella spoke of her grandfather's old poetry collection, of how she had spent weekends reading to her little niece when her parents had been away. Nathan talked about the lake near his childhood home, where he had spent summer evenings thinking about life and dreaming of places far beyond his small town. It was in these shared stories that the bond began to grow, not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily, like sunlight filtering through a canopy of trees. They laughed softly at small coincidences, the way they both had a habit of reading by the window, the same love for old bookstores, the quiet joy of rain on the pavement. Every detail, however small, seemed to draw invisible threads between their hearts. And yet, something lingered beneath the surfacing unspoken awareness that both had walls they kept carefully built. Nathan's past heartbreaks had made him hesitant, cautious about letting someone in fully. Ella, too, carried her own carefulness, formed from years of guarding her heart against disappointment. These invisible barriers made the connection tender and fragile, a delicate dance of curiosity, longing, and hope. As the afternoon turned into evening, they stepped outside, and the sky blushed with shades of pink and gold. They walked together along the quiet streets, the city around them softening in the fading light. Ella realized she had not felt this way in a long time, not excitement, not longing, but a quiet, deep awareness that something meaningful was beginning to take shape. She glanced at Nathan and noticed a faint tension in his eyes, a hesitation that mirrored her own. Yet in that shared silence there was understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the pasts they carried and the hope they both secretly nurtured. For the first time in a long while, Ella felt that maybe, just maybe, someone could truly see her, and she could see them in return. As they parted that evening, Nathan said softly, "I hope we can do this again soon." Ella SM. Days turned into a week, and yet Ella found herself thinking of Nathan more often than she had anticipated. Life went on, her work at the bookstore, the quiet walks through the city, her evenings with books, but there was a subtle change in her routine. She had started noticing small details, moments that reminded her of him, the scent of rain on the pavement, the way sunlight reflected off the windows of her favorite cafe, the soft turning of pages in a well-loved book. Fate, as she was beginning to suspect, had a curious way of arranging things. One Saturday morning, while browsing the little antique market near the waterfront, she saw him standing by a small stall of vintage postcards, examining a black and white photograph as though it held a secret he could barely contain. Her heart skipped a beat, a familiar flutter she had felt before, now intensified by the unexpected coincidence of their meeting. Nathan looked up and, for a moment, seemed as surprised as she was. "Ella," he said, a mixture of warmth and disbelief in his tone, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same," she replied, smiling, her nerves betraying a hint of excitement. "I come here sometimes. It's easy to get lost in old memories." They wandered through the market together, speaking softly about the items they found: a brass compass, a collection of postcards from the 1960s, old novels with yellowed pages. Every item seemed to carry a story, and every story reminded them of the one they were beginning to write together. Their laughter flowed naturally, easy and unguarded, filling the space between them with a sense of comfort neither had realized they had missed. As they paused by a small fountain, Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a picture of a little lake from his childhood summers. "I used to come here almost every weekend," he said. "It's where I thought a lot about life, about the people I cared about, and the ones I lost along the way." Oh, studied the photo, noticing the reflection of the sky on the water, the gentle curve of the trees, and the way the light seemed to linger even in a still image. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "almost like it's holding a memory for you." Nathan nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It does, and somehow, seeing you today, here, it's like that memory has found its way back to me." Ella felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was more than coincidence. It was as if life itself had conspired to bring them together, to remind them of the connection that had begun to form. Fragile but undeniable. They walked together to the waterfront, the city's hum fading behind them. A gentle breeze carried the scent of water and earth, and for the first time in days, Ella felt a sense of clarity. She realized that the quiet moments she had cherished in her solitude had been preparing her for this, to notice him, to feel him, to allow herself to hope. Nathan stopped suddenly and looked at her with an intensity that made her catch her breath. "Ella, I don't know why, but being near you feels like I've been waiting for this moment without even knowing it. It's overwhelming, and I can't ignore it anymore." Her eyes softened. She had felt it to the pull, the unspoken words, the sense that life was nudging them toward something meaningful. "I know what you mean," she said gently. "It's like everything we've experienced, all the memories and moments, they've been leading us here." A silence settled between them, not awkward, but full of anticipation. They didn't need to fill it with words. The connection they shared was palpable, a quiet intensity that hummed beneath the surface. And yet both of them carried a carefulness, a memory of past disappointments that made them hesitant to leap too quickly. Nathan finally broke the silence. "I want to see where this goes." Slowly, carefully, but truly. "I've never felt this with anyone else." Ella's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and hope. "I want that too," she admitted, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in years. "We can take it one day at a time, but I don't want to let this go." They smiled at each other, a quiet understanding passing between them, stronger than words could express. The small coincidences, the chance encounters, the subtle nudges of fate, they had all brought them back to this moment. And in that instant, the world felt both vast and intimate. A place where two hearts could finally begin to heal and grow together as they walked back through the city streets, the evening sun casting long shadows across the pavement. Ella realized that the spark she had felt from their first meeting had now blossomed into something deeper. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew this. The present had given them a chance to reconnect, to explore the bond that had been quietly forming, and to step forward together into a story neither of them had expected, but both were ready to embrace. Cliffhanger. And as they parted at the corner of her street, Nathan glanced back, his eyes holding a question he hadn't yet voiced. Ella's heart leapt. She knew that tomorrow could bring another twist, another moment where fate might test just how far they were willing to go for each other. Part 4. The unspoken truth. Even after that afternoon by the waterfront, Ella found herself thinking about Nathan constantly. The memory of his soft voice, the way his eyes had lingered on hers, the quiet understanding in his smile. These thoughts stayed with her long after they parted, and yet something lingered in the spaces between them. A hesitation neither had yet voiced, a truth that hovered on the edge of conversation but never fell into words. Days passed, filled with routine and small moments that reminded her of him. She would pass the bookstore window and imagine him walking past, glancing up at the titles she loved. She would hear laughter in a cafe and picture it echoing alongside her own. And through it all, the unspoken truth pulsed quietly in her heart. She cared for him deeply. More than she had expected, more than she had let herself admit. Nathan, too, felt the weight of unspoken emotions. He thought of Ella at unexpected moments, her gentle smile as she laughed at a small joke, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about something she loved, the quiet determination in her movements that seemed to make ordinary tasks feel extraordinary. He longed to tell her, to let her know that she had stirred feelings he hadn't anticipated, feelings that made him both hopeful and fearful at the same time. And yet, each time they met, a hesitation lingered between them. He wondered if confessing too soon might overwhelm her, if revealing the depth of his heart would scare her away. Ella wondered if admitting how much she thought of him would be too forward, too bold, and she feared misreading his intentions. So they spoke of books, of memories, of little everyday things, each word carrying layers of meaning they never spoke aloud. One quiet evening, they met at the city park where the lampposts cast a soft glow over the winding paths. The air was cool, tinged with the faint scent of autumn leaves. Nathan walked beside Ella, their steps almost in sync, yet a quiet tension hung between them. They stopped at a small bench overlooking the river. The water shimmered with the reflections of the city lights, creating a scene that felt both intimate and fragile. I've been thinking a lot about the day we met. Nathan began, his voice soft, almost hesitant, about how unexpected it all felt, how something as small as a smile could change everything. Ella turned to him, her chest tightening at the vulnerability in his tone. "I've thought about it too," she admitted, "more than I probably should have." Her words were quiet, almost a whisper, yet they carried the weight of months of longing, of moments left unsaid. They sat in silence for a few moments, letting the city's hum fill the space between them. Each wanted to speak, to reveal the truth hidden beneath their smiles and polite words, but fear held them back. The fear of ruining the delicate balance, of breaking the quiet understanding they had nurtured. Nathan finally spoke again, carefully, as if measuring each word. "There's so much I want to say. Things I've never told anyone in a long time. But I don't want to rush it. I just want you to know that I care deeply." Ella's eyes softened, and she reached out instinctively, letting her hand hover near his before resting it lightly on his arm. "I feel the same," she whispered, a gentle honesty that felt like a small bridge between their hearts. "More than I realized, more than I can easily put into words." The weight of unspoken emotions seemed to lift slightly in that moment. They didn't need to speak in grand declarations. The truth was there in the quiet touch, in the shared glance, in the small sighs that escaped as they watched the water ripple under the soft lamplight. It was a truth delicate enough to be whispered, strong enough to hold them together. They continued to sit, talking in small, careful phrases about their days, their memories, their hopes. Each conversation was layered with subtle meaning, each laugh carrying a depth of feeling neither dared to fully reveal. It was a quiet struggle, a dance of hearts learning to express themselves gently, carefully, without breaking the fragile bond that had formed between them as the night deepened. They stood to leave, lingering at the park entrance. Nathan looked at Ella with a softness that made her heart ache. "I don't want to hide how I feel anymore," he said. I need to be patient because I don't want to lose what we have." Ella smiled, a mixture of relief and longing in her eyes. "I understand," she said softly, "and I don't want to lose it either." They walked away slowly, side by side, carrying the weight of unspoken truths and the quiet hope that, in time, their hearts would fully SP. The next week passed in a blur of ordinary days, yet each hour seemed heavier with anticipation. Ella and Nathan continued their quiet routine coffee shop mornings, walks along the waterfront, conversations about books and memories, but beneath the surface, the unspoken truth from the previous evening lingered, like a gentle current, pulling them closer without ever allowing them to meet fully. Ella felt it first. She noticed the way Nathan's eyes softened whenever he looked at her, the subtle shift in his voice when he spoke her name, the careful pauses in his sentences as if weighing the risk of revealing too much. She realized that the walls they had each built to protect themselves were trembling, slowly giving way to something more honest, more vulnerable. And yet both of them hesitated, caught between longing and fear. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when fate intervened. The city streets glistened under the downpour, reflections of neon signs dancing in puddles. Ella had ducked into a small cafe to escape the rain, her coat damp and her hair curling slightly from the moisture. She was drying her hands on a napkin when the door opened and Nathan stepped inside, shaking off his umbrella. Their eyes met immediately, and the world seemed to pause for a heartbeat. "Ella," he said, slightly breathless. As if the rain had carried more than just water, it had carried urgency. "Nathan," she replied, her voice calm, though her heart raced. He came to sit opposite her, dripping slightly, yet determined, his expression serious. There was no hesitation in his eyes now, only a quiet intensity that made Ella hold her breath. She sensed that today would be different. Something in the air pressed them forward, an invisible nudge toward honesty that neither could ignore. "I can't keep this inside anymore," Nathan began, his hands resting on the table, fingers nervously brushing against a coffee cup. "I've tried to be patient. I've tried to let things unfold slowly, but I care about you, Ella. More than I realized, more than I should admit without knowing how you feel." Ella's chest tightened. The words were exactly what she had hoped to hear, and yet there was a fragility in them that made her emotions surge. She searched his eyes, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for any sign that he might take it back, but all she saw was sincerity, pure and unwavering. Nathan," she said softly, her own emotions trembling to the surface. "I feel the same way. I've tried to keep it quiet, to not rush anything, but the truth is, I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what this could be." He leaned forward slightly, relief and awe in his gaze. "I was so afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I spoke first, I might lose you. But waiting, it's been harder than I imagined. You've been on my mind constantly, in every quiet moment, in every book I pick up, in every place that reminds me of who I am, or who I want to be." Ella's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I felt the same. And sometimes I think if we don't speak our hearts now, we might never get the chance." They sat together, the rain tapping gently against the windows, creating a cocoon of warmth and intimacy in the middle of the bustling cafe. The unspoken feelings, the longing, the hesitation, they all seemed to unravel. replaced by an honesty that both terrified and thrilled them. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic confession shouted across a street, just a hearts finally aligned, voices trembling but steady, acknowledging the depth of what had been growing quietly between them. Nathan reached across the table and lightly took Ella's hand. The simple touch carried everything words could not: reassurance, devotion, and the promise of patience and understanding. Ella held his hand, feeling the strength of his sincerity, the gentle certainty that they were both ready to step forward together. "I've never experienced this much all at once," Nathan said quietly, almost to himself. "And I don't want to go back. I want to see where this goes. I want to explore this fully and honestly with you." Ella smiled through the tears that now spilled freely. "Neither have I," she admitted. "I've never felt something so clear, so real, and yet so fragile. But I want to try. With you." The storm outside seemed to soften, as if the city itself were listening and approving. For the first time, they spoke not in half measures or guarded phrases, but in truth. They didn't need to fill the silence with grand declarations. Every glance, every handhold, every quiet smile carried volumes as the cafe clock ticked on. Neither of them noticed the hours slipping by. The world beyond the window cars, splashing through puddles, umbrellas bobbing along wet sidewalks, was distant and unimportant. What mattered was the honesty they had finally shared, the bond strengthened by words that had long been held back, and the future they now dared to imagine together. Cliffhanger, and as they finally stepped outside into the evening air, the rain having softened to a gentle drizzle, Ella and Nathan walked side by side, hearts open and trembling, both knowing that tomorrow could bring challenges. But for the first time, they would face them together. The unspoken truth was now spoken, and their story had crossed the turning point, ready to unfold into whatever came next. The following days felt different for Ella and Nathan, though nothing about their routines had changed outwardly. Work continued. Walks were still taken along familiar streets, and books were still carefully chosen from shelves. Yet beneath the surface, everything had shifted. The unspoken tension, the quiet longing, the hesitant glances, they had all transformed into something tangible, something they could finally name. It was a Saturday afternoon when they decided to meet at the small park near the river, the same place where they had first begun to acknowledge the feelings they'd held in silence. The autumn leaves had turned brilliant shades of amber and gold, carpeting the ground in colors that seemed to celebrate new beginnings. The sun filtered gently through the branches, casting a soft glow over the path where they walked side by side. Ella felt a gentle flutter in her chest, a mix of nervousness and joy. For so long, she had imagined this moment in fragments and imagined conversation, a hopeful smile, a chance for honesty. And now, walking beside Nathan, all of those imagined moments felt real, more vivid than she had dared hope. Nathan looked at her, his gaze steady and warm. "It feels right," he said quietly. "Being here with you like this, like nothing else matters." Ella smiled softly, feeling the truth of his words in her own heart. "It does," she replied. "I've never felt anything like this before. It's peaceful, even in its intensity." They paused near the edge of the river, where the water reflected the golden sunlight in gentle ripples. A flock of birds took off from the trees nearby, their wings catching the light as they rose into the sky. It was a moment of quiet beauty, and for both of them it seemed symbolic, like life itself was acknowledging their journey. Offering a subtle blessing for what lay ahead, Nathan reached for Ella's hand. This time there was no hesitation, no need for careful measurement. His fingers intertwined with hers naturally, firmly, as if they had been meant to fit together all along. Ella felt warmth spread through her chest, a certainty that this connection, the trust, the understanding, the honesty was something rare and worth holding on to. "I want to promise you something," Nathan said, his voice gentle but serious. "I can't predict the future. Life is full of unexpected twists. But I can promise that I'll be honest with you, that I'll be here, and that I'll do my best to make us stronger every day." Ella's eyes glistened. She had imagined hearing these words countless times, but now that they were real, they struck her with a quiet power. "I want the same," she said. "I want to face whatever comes, as long as we face it together." For the first time, they allowed themselves to linger in the present without worry about the past or uncertainty about tomorrow. The weight of hesitation, the caution born from heartbreak, all melted away in this simple act of shared trust and genuine connection. They talked about small dreams, hopes for the future, and the simple joys that often went unnoticed, the kind of conversations that quietly strengthen a bond more than grand gestures ever could. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the river in soft shades of orange and pink, Nathan and Ella sat on a nearby bench, hands still intertwined. They didn't need words to fill the silence. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children playing, phased the soft lapping of water at the riverbank. They were enough. In that moment, everything felt complete, as though the world had aligned to let them simply be together, unburdened and at peace. "I've never experienced this much all at once," Ella whispered, echoing the feeling they had both felt months before, when a single encounter had sparked something neither could ignore. "And now I can't imagine wanting anything more." Nathan smiled, his eyes reflecting the golden glow of the sunset. "Neither can I," he replied. "It's overwhelming, yes, but in the best way. And I want to explore every moment of it with you." The city began to settle into the quiet of evening, the soft glow of street lamps illuminating their path as they walked home together. The streets, once ordinary and familiar, now seemed alive with possibility. Every small sound, the chatter of passersby, the distant hum of traffic, the whisper of wind through the trees felt like a subtle reminder that life, in all its unpredictability, could still bring moments of deep, lasting joy. By the time they reached the corner of Ella's street, the sky had deepened to a gentle twilight. They paused, hands still,